We have another young Indian with us today as part of the Voice of the Young series. Hello, everyone. Good to be back. Right now, we have with us Preksha Jain. Let's listen to her. Over to you, Preksha.
Hello, sir. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for this amazing opportunity. I was honestly looking for something, a platform like this to express my views. So I'm really grateful to you and the audience as well, the listeners, the watchers. So, yeah. So I'm a recent B.Sc Economics honors graduate, and I'm currently working as a research assistant at London Business School. So they have a project in India, and I'm managing the field side, the study, and also the participants. Moreover, I'm helping with the data collection. So, yeah, also simultaneously, I'm pursuing a postgraduate diploma in development studies from IGNOU. Talking about some of my past experiences, I worked as a research assistant at Symbiosis School of Economics, Pune itself, and I have worked as a field investigator at NABARD as well. Also, I was an intern researcher at the Smart Cities mission, which was initiated by the government of India. And I've also worked at Kailash Satyarthi Children's Foundation. So
Wow,
I'd like to keep
you have done a lot, I must say. It's very impressive. Let's go ahead.
I'd like to keep my introduction short only because talking about my interest, I have a keen interest in energy economics and I have been researching lately in the same field as well. So, energy economics, energy transition, green finance. So, you can say that is my forte. So, keeping my introduction short, I have a presentation and I'll be talking about the global scenario for energy transition and India's stance on the same. So, if I can present my screen.
Sure,
So,
let's do it.
perfect. Is my presentation visible?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So, giving a brief, talking about, let's say, global warming and greenhouse gas emissions. So, global warming, as we all know, is caused by greenhouse gas emissions and is having devastating effects on our planet's ecosystem. And this is mostly because of, let's say, our current over reliance on the traditional fossil fuels, which is also resulting in extreme weather events. To start with, let's say, rising sea levels or erratic rainfalls and so on. So, no matter however many times I say it, we need to lower these emissions. Even according to the UN Development Program, the global energy sector itself, you won't believe, is responsible for 73% of annual greenhouse gas emissions. So the importance of the energy transition cannot be overstated. Moreover, the temperature is already increased a little more than 1.1 degrees Celsius in 2023, more than the pre-industrial levels. So if not now, then never, honestly. So if I have to define energy transition, which is basically the topic for today, in the words of S&P Global, it is the global energy sector shift from fossil-based systems of energy production and consumption, including oil, natural gas, and coal, to renewable energy sources like wind and solar. And to put into simple words, you're just shifting from traditional, you know, fossil fuel based energy production sources to more renewable sources. And you're trying to reach towards sustainable development. So, this renewable energy transition is a gradual and steady shift of global energy production towards a zero carbon system. A zero carbon, net zero carbon, you all must have heard about it a lot. It is basically trying to balance between the carbon emissions and the amount of carbon that is absorbed by the environment. And you want to make it as negligible as possible.
Okay.
So it is, yes, sir. So it is expected to take place by 2050, according to the International Renewable Energy Agency, However, different countries have set different goals about reaching net zero emissions. And I'll be delving deeper into India's goal, which is 2070 to reach net zero emissions later, the presentation.
Okay, let's continue.
The global energy transition is the main tool in the broader strategy adopted by governments to contain the global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial level by the mid-century, which is the goal set up by UNDP. And needless to say, irrespective of the country being developed or developing, this needs to be taken into consideration as the need of the hour. So, to reach the UNDP's emission reduction targets, which is 70% reduction in energy related CO2 emissions by 2050 and over 90% reduction in CO2 emissions through producing this energy from renewables, efficiency, and electrification. So the targets are pretty high, and I'm not sure if enough efforts are put into to be able to achieve them. Because even right now, even having such hefty targets, our energy system continues to rely on the burning of fossil fuels, emitting huge amounts of greenhouse gases that are radically warming and destabilizing our climate. And as I mentioned before, we are seeing more extreme weather events as well. And it's not just about the environment, honestly, because beyond these impacts on our climate, millions of people around the world are denied affordable access to sufficient and sustainable energy. The global energy market is increasingly reeling from shocks with huge societal and economic consequences. And to simply put, in a nutshell, we need to rapidly transition from an energy system that, served us well in the last century, but we need to shift to an energy system that is fit for the purpose for the 21st century with the increasing energy demands. So delving a little into the history before I go ahead with the solutions and the benefits, this urgency with which calls for a move to a renewable energy, it grew during the 1990s as the effects of climate change were increasingly discussed as a matter of importance. And it's not just me who's stressing about climate change and the need to address it. The 2015 COP21 Paris Agreement saw 196 nations agree to reach carbon neutrality, the net zero that we call it now, by the middle of this century, which calls to limit global warming to below 2 degrees Celsius, preferably 1.5 degrees Celsius to pre-industrial levels. But we are already about to reach 1.2 degrees Celsius increase in this year. So we are terribly failing at this and need to do something about it. So to put it in the, let's say, terms of the various fossil fuels or energy sources, conventional sources that we have, this transition will require a 95% reduction in coal use, a 60% reduction in oil, and a 45% reduction in gas use as compared to 2019 levels in order to reach just a 50% chance of meeting the Paris Agreement target of 1.5 degrees Celsius. A humongous reduction as 95, 60, and 45 will only ensure a 0.5 probability of reaching the targets. And we still see continued reliance on fossil fuels still. So if not the need and the urgency of the climate change and global warming, I would talk about some or the innumerable benefits that we have that energy transition has. So to name a few, it is a solution to the climate crisis that is happening, to say the least. It will, if energy transition is, smoothly adopted, if it is efficient and effective in any country, it will reduce climate change-induced natural disasters. And if we actually keep on putting in conscious efforts into investing in these sources, renewable sources and the other renewables, cutting carbon emissions by 45% by 2030 and then to net zero by 2050, as was envisioned by UNDP, would keep global warming at no more than 1.5 degrees Celsius below pre-industrial levels, ensuring that the impacts of climate change, to name a few, let's say sea level rise or floods, wildfires, droughts, or higher temperatures, they won't become more severe than they already are. So this is the minimum that we have to do to stay at this level. And it will allow for cleaner air as well. And if there is no air pollution, air quality is good, it would reduce diseases caused by pollution, delivering, let's say, better health benefits for the citizens as well. And last but not the least, it would support the conservation of natural resources and protect the biodiversity. Again, cannot overemphasize the importance of biodiversity protection and conservation over here. Moving on to decarbonization, which again would simply put means reducing carbon emissions. So energy transition will help with decarbonization as well. And one of the best or most efficient ways to achieve decarbonization is electrification, which will ultimately help in achieving net zero. So to define electrification, it is replacing the fossil fuel-based technologies in all sectors with technologies that use electricity and can make a significant contribution to the process of decarbonization. So basically ensuring that such electricity is produced from renewables instead, like wind and solar. And if it is produced from the renewable sources instead of the fossil fuels, it will further reduce and eliminate emissions altogether, if diligently followed by all the nations, and will not only increase the energy efficiency, but overall reduce the use of electricity as well. Another way to cut back or eliminate GHG emissions. Talking about, since I am planning to be aspiring to be an economist, cannot leave out the economy. So economic growth and investment. Green transition will most definitely create new green technology investment opportunities and reducing the wasteful subsidies that we are providing, let's say, on electronic vehicles, which currently, not just electronic vehicles, but these subsidies related to environment, overall, they stand at around $423 billion annually that governments can instead spend on other services to improve citizens' lives. So the opportunity cost is way too high, not only in terms of the environment, but the money that is going in. So it will also reduce the exposure to fluctuations in the fossil fuel prices resulting from the geopolitical conditions. And we are very aware of how it is like these days, talking about the Russia-Ukraine crisis. And all of us saw how the countries, So this will result into a more reliably priced energy supply and thus helping the businesses, families, and the nations overall to plan for a better future. Also, it is proven that in terms of financial security, that renewable energy has been less affected by the financial crisis over the past 2 decades that we have, be it the 2008 crash or, so renewable energy has been able to outshine all of these and has, if we, stick to energy transition or if it's implemented, then it will definitely offer improved financial security to all the nations, making markets more stable, to say the least. And not just that, job creation also. So green energy has the potential to create jobs as climate change is being tackled. I mean, what else would you possibly want? Just to provide a proof, some 4 million jobs have already been created in Europe through the transition to cleaner energy solutions, and which estimates suggesting that between 0.3% to 0.9% more jobs will be created by 2050 as a result of transition compared to if nothing changes. So an overall impact would be an increase in employment. And according to the UNDP as well, if you're going with reliable sources, the energy transition could lead to the creation of 30 million new jobs.
Okay, it's good news. Let's continue.
And talking about the reduced energy dependence that countries have on each other, this dependency on energy imports have been shown to have drawbacks with regard to energy security and pricing. India being the third largest energy importer in the world is itself facing these problems. So if there is a smooth energy transition, the locally produced renewable energy removes this problem entirely while being competitive with fossil fuels as well. That is another advantage. Then industrial progress, which started all of it, the climate change entirely, the industrial revolution, even that is supported by energy transition. So energy transition has been necessary as a means of progressing industry and leading to breakthroughs such as the industrial revolution, which started all of it. But energy transition can, create new energy resources now also support these breakthroughs as the other resources, the older ones, become scarce. So post initial investment, which I completely understand is extremely hefty, but after break even, the energy transition can lead to reduced energy bills and industrial costs overall. So this frees up the capital for investment in other sustainable businesses and development models as well. So it is only going to help in further reestablishing the circular economy development models that we have. And last in economic terms is improved competitiveness. For example, if I give Europe, okay, if I talk about Europe, it has already seen improvements in competitiveness as a result of energy transition. So let's say while industries such as cement, chemicals, glass, plastics, and steel, they still need to improve in terms of energy efficiency. This can most definitely be achieved through digitalization, automation, and the increased use of recycling and reusing materials. So, in order to, if there's this competitive background at a global level, all these industries and nations will definitely try to move towards sustainability. And you cannot forget about the human part of development. And talking about the societal aspect, energy transition helps with that as well. So it provides a platform for social development, especially in communities involved in renewable energy projects. Let's say if I talk about the solar projects that are being set up or established in the remote areas of India. So these people who are helping with these projects are the natives. So not only are they, getting employment, but are also becoming a part of the workforce and earning their livelihood from the same. So it is also leading to societal development. Moreover, the energy transition is a unique opportunity to address this energy poverty. Again, to simply define energy poverty, it is the lack of access to modern energy services. And as I already mentioned, that affordable energy is not available specifically to the developing countries and the people with lower income, let's say. So, energy transition, if established at a global or a national level, will help get rid of energy poverty as well and will ensure a reliable energy supply for domestic uses of these parts of the population. And I already talked about circular economy, but just to restate that investment in sustainable projects and the application of these circular economy models contribute to social equity, which is a tool for, rebalancing fairness among regions at different developmental stages. Like I talked about the solar energy projects that are being carried out in India, which is ensuring that the people, these natives, are getting employment and are becoming a part of the development that is happening of India as a whole. Since I've been talking about India and I also mentioned how hefty the expenditure is initially, and India being a developing country still. how do these developing countries, ensure that there is some energy transition happening? How do they progress towards it? So I'll talk about India's standing and relevance in terms of energy transition to explain how is it like for developing countries per se. So India's climate ambitions are to, reach net zero by 2070, which is definitely higher than the other developed economies, but completely understandable considering the population size as well. And India also targets 50% electricity to be generated only by renewables by 2030. And we'll see if it actually, is implemented or we are able to achieve it, or is just one of the false claims, or it completely falls apart, like how the 1.5 degrees Celsius limit that was set is about to be broken in a few years. Also, at the significance of the Indian energy transition progress at the global climate change level, India pioneers, even though it being a developing country, mind me. So India pioneers a low carbon economic development model that could avoid the carbon intensive approaches that many developed countries have pursued in the past. And thus, India can provide a blueprint for the other developing economies as well. Something that can be replicated coming from a developing country itself. Talking about the energy demand and growth, again, one of the biggest challenges, India's size drives significant energy demand growth. And to ensure smooth energy transition, majority of this decade's demand needs to be met with low carbon sources. And there are other challenges as well. The commodity price surge that I was talking about because of unstable markets, commodity markets, renewable markets, we need to ensure that the energy poverty energy poverty is taken care of, and energy, or let's say just talking about electricity, is affordable to the poorer sections of the society. Also, as I mentioned before, India being the third largest energy importer holds energy security risk. It runs a risk because of, again, these unstable markets again. So the lack of reliable electricity supply, the health impacts of the pollution that is happening, and high levels of pollution, I do not even have to mention, have left Indian cities with some of the poorest air qualities in the world. But despite there being a lot of disadvantages, firstly, I feel that we need to acknowledge these in order to make progress. Once these are identified or people acknowledge, they get out of denial, because we have a lot of nihilists as well, people who believe that there's no climate change at all. And, even at Diwali, which just passed by, we saw people still bursting firecrackers, which left Delhi to be one of the most polluted after Diwali. So, yeah, first step is acknowledging it, accepting it, that there is an issue and you need to get rid of it somehow. You need to solve it. So, there are existing policy measures like, the removal of petrol and diesel subsidies, which happened in 2010, or the introduction of subsidies for electric vehicles in 2019. But these subsidies, as I mentioned already, hold a lot of opportunity costs. So if energy transition is put into place, all of this money can be put into something more productive, which can, further facilitate or catalyze the economic growth and development of the nation. However, there are other successful energy efficiency programs also, and talking about the traditional biomass where the government transitioned away from it through its initiatives. It provided fuel gas for cooking and thus reducing reliance on the traditional biomass that has been used for many years by the Indian households, specifically the ones in the villages. So there have been some steps that were taken towards energy transition, and talking about the emerging technologies as well, not just the policies. Enormous investment in hydrogen, battery storage, low carbon steel, cement, and fertilizers have been made by the Indian government. And India is particularly well placed to become a global leader in renewable batteries and green hydrogen. So these and other low carbon technologies could create a market with up to $80 billion in India by 2030. So there is humongous potential, but the policies that are currently in place aren't helping or aren't encashing on these advantages that there are. So what should developing countries do about it? Because most of them hold the potential to transition to establish energy transition. What they need is one of the things that they need is international support and collaboration. So let's say it is essential for shifting India's development to low carbon path. Financially speaking, to reach net zero carbon emissions by 2070, which is India's goal, the IEA estimates that $160 billion per year is needed on an average across India's energy economy between now and 2030. So you need this much of investment per year until 2030 to be able to achieve the net zero target by 2070. And the current investment that is happening is barely one third of the amount that is required. Therefore, access of low cost long term capital is the key to achieve net zero over here. And there is lack of funds again. Because if there is not enough investment in these projects, there's no point. Again, we'll fail to achieve the net zero target. We'll keep on pushing it ahead until there's no time at all. Which I already feel that we are very, very late. And substantial changes have been made irreversible changes regarding the environment. But still, better late than never is what they say. Yeah.
Okay, let's continue.
Yeah. So, what is like the incentive that these developed countries have to help these developing economies? If I talk in terms of India, as a large developing economy with over 1.3 billion people, which drives its huge energy demands also, India's climate adaptation and mitigation ambitions are not just transformational for India, but for the entire planet, considering the size, the amount of people who live in India. So, achieving net zero is not just about reducing greenhouse gas emissions, it's about collaborating with the other nations. It's not just about protecting your own country. This isn't how it works. You need to save the entire earth, help the countries who are lacking funds or need collaboration in some other sense. So, I mean, I'm coming towards the end of the presentation today. The energy transition, it's not just a shift in power that we're talking about. It's, I'd say, nothing less than a gateway to a future of sustainable jobs, or let's say reduced cost, efficient utilization of the resources that there are, and ultimately global equity. And I feel that all the stakeholders need to make urgent conscious efforts to ensure efficient and effective energy transition. I think that was pretty much it from my side for the presentation. I'll stop sharing the screen.
Oh, yeah, do that. Well, thank you, Preksha. It's a very impressive and comprehensive presentation of the issues. And you have rightly, I think, expressed some skepticism whether we are actually going to meet these goals. Because as you said, the goals require tremendous amounts of effort, and you don't see that happening. 1.5 Celsius doesn't look reachable. And I think you have pointed that out very clearly, that look, this, and the younger generation actually is much more aware, I think, than the older people. The older people like me, we grew up in different times, and our gut instincts are from those days. and perhaps our thinking is also from those days. And we certainly we perhaps created part of the problem, but we certainly were not thinking of solving the problem. Okay. So I think your message perhaps resonates more with the younger people than the policymakers and so on. But it's well laid out. Okay. And we can always debate all the points, but it is not my intention here to debate with anyone. And so I thank you very much for making such a major effort. A lot of information collapsed and put together very nicely and clearly. So well done. That's what I'll say. Okay. And I hope that you get a chance to work on these issues in some sense. Okay. Somewhere along the line, there are some job openings where you can actually be involved in tailoring some of these solutions and see where it takes you. Okay. That's my comment on the presentation. Let's proceed if you have some other things you want to talk about.
So I think that was pretty much it from my side.
Okay.
So I kept the introduction short because this was the entire motive or the objective, me getting a platform and to be able to utilize it properly to put across my message.
Well, you've done
Make my
that.
opinion
You've done
heard.
that. But, let's also hear from you why you chose this, why you felt so inspired to do this.
Okay, so this was during college only, let's say second year of college, and we were supposed to choose our dissertation topic because mine was a B.Sc Economics honors degree, and as I mentioned, it is from Symbiosis School of Economics, where research is as in a very important part of the curriculum. So we were supposed to pick a wide or let's say a broad topic, and I realized that what is the point of just adding to the pile of research papers? That is something that I've always resonated with. That I see a problem, I see an urgent problem that needs to be addressed as soon as possible. And why not research on the same to, ensure that I find a solution and somehow create an impact and help with whatever is happening. And I felt climate change is something that as I mentioned is the need of the hour, and there is not enough research happening. I it is a very emerging field, I will accept that, but I still see not a lot of people or researchers per se are you know talking about the same or researching on the same. Very few people know about, let's say, green finance or blue finance. So it is very important to create awareness by the same. If I don't do it, if I don't play my part, if the youth doesn't do it, who is gonna do it? Because after this, I mean, as I said, it's gonna be very late. So
Yeah.
now is the time. Now is when you start.
Okay. All right. That's great. All right. So I'm happy to hear that. But let's not end this without my asking you the question I ask everybody. Do you want to add anything else?
Nothing really, but yeah, I would still urge everybody to, I mean, at least try and be more self aware. If you cannot help with, I mean, these things seem huge. You might feel that there's nothing you can do about it. These require a lot of investment, these renewable projects. This is something that the government, the policy makers, and the other stakeholders would do. But all you can do is, play your part in the process, ensure that at least your carbon footprint is minimal. So, yeah, that is what I expect and hope that every single human being does.
Okay, that's a good aim to propagate. Let's end it here today. Perhaps we catch up with you 1 year from now to see what
That's
has actually happened in your thinking or in your practice. And let's say bye to the viewers now. And I'll be back with another young person and hopefully as passionate as Preksha and as dedicated as Preksha. And the youth certainly have a role today in India, I think, because quite a bit of prosperity has come to India compared to if I compare my times at your age and your times at your age, there's a huge difference. And the prosperity of sorts has come to India. With that, the toxic issues have also come. And it's up to you to handle them, as Preksha has rightly pointed out. So I'll be back with another young person or an expert. It's very interesting to me to hear such clear and passionate exposition. I hope more will be inspired by it. But for the moment, let's say bye. Bye, everybody. Okay? See you
Okay.
next time. Bye-bye.